Well, I've never gotten anything published, but I want to, be a writer, get stuff published. So but just for fun, I'm gonna tell you how I became writing and how I became came to love writing and like writing, enjoy it. So and like want to be a writer and all that, and write a lot of fiction and nonfiction and whatever, stuff about things I either noticed about society or noticed about the universe, or just like my own experiences, people like the experience of people I knew, my experience with people I knew, and just like just about also fiction, based on some social justice issues, including about experiences that I experienced myself or saw others experience, or just like others too, where I could just identify with them just because of the theme of it all. But like even though I never experienced it myself or experienced anything to that magnitude or whatever. But anyway, I what how I became like how I got really into writing. Like I didn't really know that I liked writing before. Like I liked reading, but I didn't know that I liked writing. Like I kind of didn't like writing. Like I thought it was like a something that I wouldn't like. I thought it was something I wouldn't enjoy. I never thought to write stories until fourth grade, really, because in like I wrote one or two, just like everybody does in like kindergarten, first grade, whatever. Because I could write in kindergarten. I was one of the two in my class that could, because I had no life, But like and because I was just interested, I guess, in learning how to write, even if I didn't like writing stories back then. But then in fourth grade, we had this really like frustrating assignment for me where every Monday we would have to write in our like journal in English class about what we did on the weekend. And I had like no life. My life was so boring, and I was so embarrassed about my boring life. So like I was like, and I was also just so bored. Like it was like a really torturous kind of assignment for me, because I really didn't like that assignment. It was like a really boring assignment because, well, my life was boring, and I wasn't going to just fill my, paper with a bunch of boring stuff about my boring life that nobody was interested in. So why would anyone want to read it anyway? And why would I want to write it? So I started making stuff up. I started saying like so my writing career started with a bunch of lies, and I started making stuff up about what I did on the weekend. And at first I'm like, yeah, this is a fake story, and I put a disclaimer. Then I stopped putting disclaimers. And then the teacher thought that some of the stuff I was writing about my life was real, and she's like, how can you say you have a boring life? She would write like comments on my stuff in my journal. She'd be like, how can you say you have a boring life? You have such an exciting life at home. Wow, how can you say your life is boring? And I made up siblings I didn't have, friends I didn't have, a grandmother who lived with us who didn't actually live with us, and a dog we didn't have, and events that didn't happen, and things we did that we never did, and experiences I never actually had. And I just made it all up. And but not to the point where it was like unrealistic where nobody would believe it. So like I was kind of a better liar then than I am now, because now I don't like lying. I don't, because it's like I don't like lying. So I'm not a practiced liar. I hate the idea of being lied to. So I hate the idea of lying to people. Sorry. But like I hate the idea of lying to people. Mm. So I don't. And when I do, it's either because it's really none of their business anyway, and it's like I'm protecting someone that I do care about, whose business it is. Where I'm not telling somebody else that person's business, because it's none of their business what that person's business is, and that's pretty obvious. But that's the only time I lie to anyone, the example everybody gives, where oh well, what if you have to lie to the Nazis that you're hiding Jews in your basement? But so obviously I would lie to them. And and so like it's not something I do now just to because I'm bored or something. But back then, like it's like, this is just an assignment, who cares, right? And I did feel kind of like, am I going to get in trouble for this? Because I didn't know any better. I was 9 years old. I was in fourth grade. It was like a really boring assignment, and I thought, are we getting like graded on our morals here, or on our English ability? Obviously we were getting graded on our English ability, not on our morals. Because this wasn't moral and religious education. This was English. And it's about learning how to write. It's not about telling the truth in your writing. Because this isn't like confession class. It's English class. It's about learning how to how to explain things, and how to use words, not necessarily how to use them for good, so, and who am I hurting by doing this? It's not like I'm, telling people, like refusing to tell people something that's their business that would affect their lives, or that I'm telling somebody that would affect their lives negatively by it being false. But I didn't understand that back then, because it had been drilled into me that I was, that you're, going to hell if you, lie at all for any reason. And if you steal a candy bar, you're a horrible person. But yet, if you make your child, feel like they're going to roast in hell forever and be tortured, literally tortured forever because they steal a candy bar, that's somehow okay, and that's somehow even desirable and makes you a better person than everybody around you. But yet, if you're that child that steals that candy bar because they're hungry, then suddenly, you're going to hell forever and ever. And not just any hell, like a torturous hell in a lake of fire. Like, that is not even okay to tell your child that. It's not true. It's not accurate. It's not necessary, and it's not humane. And but anyway, I'm going off on a tangent like I always do, including in my writing. But um, so anyway, I wrote all this, like, lies in my journal, and my teacher got a kick out of it because she was like, "Oh wow, you have such an interesting life," and she kept like looking forward to my writings. Even she's saying, "I'm looking forward to your next one," and saying, "Are you thinking of being an author when you grow up?" And a few of my teachers asked me that, starting with that one, and I think. And she was like, "Yeah, you have such a good description of your brother's birthday party." I didn't have a brother, and there was no birthday party that weekend, but she wasn't to know that, So mm. so then my mother went to the parent teacher interviews, and she just like let slip, like, innocently, that I was an only child. And then my teacher said, "Oh, she's an only child," and she was like interested. She wasn't mad at me or anything. She was just interested. She was like amused that I made up all this stuff about all this stuff that happened in my house that wasn't even true. And she told the class about it. She was so amused about it. And she was more like impressed at my writing ability than she was like, at my, supposed, lack of transparency or something, because the assignment wasn't about that, and it wasn't affecting anybody negatively. But I still felt kind of stupid until she kind of, just, acted amused about it, and therefore, like, I wasn't in any trouble. So, like, I relaxed a bit, but, you know, uh, but, anyway, it was a, now there were times when I really did lie, about my life, like when I was a kid, off and on, like just like, to people I didn't know very well, like, oh yeah, I have a brother, I have a sister, because I was so embarrassed about my boring life. I was embarrassed about it, and it wasn't any reflection on me, but I felt like it was somehow that like I had no, activities going on, no, disasters going on, no siblings, no like apartment building full of friends, because I lived kind of isolated, not like rural or anything because it was suburban, but it was in a like an apartment with a lot of old people and not very many children. And it was just a very boring life, and I wasn't really allowed to go out anyway. And my friends that also weren't allowed to go out, that would have been great if we were seeing each other all the time, but they had a lot of activities lined up because their families were like more like rich than ours were, so they could afford stuff like for them to do and stuff. And I was just very bored, always in the house and everything. And that was not okay, because all of the kids like who lived nearby but not in my apartment complex, they would be allowed to go out and stuff, because their parents, and my mom said, oh, they're gonna end up dead, blah blah blah, their parents aren't protective enough of them and aren't looking after them properly, and they're gonna end up dead, blah blah blah. And some of them would, but quality of life matters too. And when your children aren't allowed to go out at all, they're gonna end up dead anyway if you don't watch it, because they're either gonna get so depressed, or they're gonna be so bored, they're either gonna take risks, or they're gonna like just get depressed and like not suicidal necessarily, but just it cuts into your quality of life. Or they I say a lot because I'm nervous or something. I don't know why. It's just a habit I got into, and I know it's annoying. But anyway, it's like when I say like a lot, it's just I know it's annoying, and I know it's a very 90s thing, but I guess I have no life, whatever. But and I'm also just a nervous person sometimes, and I don't know if I'm nervous now, but anyway, now I'm off on a tangent again. But anyway, and I was on a tangent even when I was talking about my life, but there were times when I did, back to the whole point of of the tangent, like when I did lie about my life, like to like kids that I didn't really know, but that I kind of knew, at the after school daycare or whatever, like after like when I was in like third grade, where I and fourth at the beginning of fourth grade too, because And part of my inspiration for my journal lies was, the book Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, which we read in that class, that English class. But like also, I had read a bit of Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing before with my cousin and my mother, like about 2 years ago, or 2 years before that, or something. So I remember this scene where like the little boy named Fudge refuses to eat, refuses to eat, refuses to eat, and then his father, he says, "I want cereal." So then they give him some cereal, but then he refuses to eat it. So then the father gets so frustrated, he brings the kid into the bathroom, puts him in the bathtub, and dumps the cereal on his head, saying, "If you're not going to eat it, then you're going to wear it." So anyway, I found that such an amusing, story, and I didn't know that it would be considered abuse these days. So I just told the story as though it was my brother that this happened to, and my father that did it. Mm. And I thought it was amusing. Like I wasn't trying to get anybody in trouble. Like it was a total like fluke, a total innocent thing, and I didn't get anybody in trouble. It didn't get anybody in trouble. But but unfortunately, some of the staff were kind of like skeptical of my parents after that, because they were like wondering, and they had already been wondering about us because they saw us as kind of off already and everything, and because they saw all three of us, me and my parents, as kind of off, and this was backed up by some of the other kids at the place, and also their parents who had dealt with us also themselves, and they saw us as kind of off. And one of the kids there even said, "Oh yeah, my mom said that you're mental, and your mother is mental, and your father is mental, and you're mental," and that hit me hard, but I couldn't think about it too much, or I'd go insane, so I didn't think about it too much. But but then I just started telling a bunch of lies, around that time after that, saying, "Oh yeah, I have a brother, I have a sister," and I would make, kids laugh and stuff. And there was this one boy, whom I became close to, and he was telling me, about his life, and he opened up. He was a very shy boy. He was standing alone all the time. And then one day when I was standing alone too, I started talking to him. Well, he started talking to me, then I started talking to him, and then we just started opening up to each other. And some of the stuff I told was true, obviously, because we had to bond over something. And then other stuff was just the stories I was telling because I found it amusing. I was telling lies about my life, Oh, we have a bird, we have a dog, we have a cat. We didn't have either, but like, and the cat did this, and my brother did that, and whatever. And I made him laugh. And the staff at the daycare were like, "Wow, she's making him laugh. This kid never laughs, and he's always alone, and he's always shy, and he's always scared, and he's always, in his mind, because he's so, traumatized, shy, and he was an autistic boy." And I didn't know at the time that I'm also on the spectrum. Like I was never diagnosed with anything until I was 14. So like I was 9 at the time. I didn't know. I was never diagnosed. Nothing like that. So I didn't know, like I just assumed that like I wasn't, but I was, and he was autistic, but he had been diagnosed, so they were aware of that about him. And so he was, one of the daycare ladies told my mother, "Yeah, she helped this autistic boy open up, and blah blah blah, and she's helping him open up, and it's amazing." And like, and they would tell me to go and like, how like talk to him and get him to come out of like the shade where he was sitting on a bench and come into the sun, and play with others, which I tried to convince him, but like he didn't want to, so so I just stayed with him and just hung out with him, and we had fun together, just talking and stuff, I'm playing with my stuffed bear that I would sometimes sneak into school, just to play with and to show off, like to people that I like to hang out with or play with or whatever, and anyway, back to the main point here, where I would tell lies and stuff. I'm sorry, I keep spitting on the camera or something. It's like I'm all dried out and it's like, yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Mm, mm. Don't know what's going on today. I should probably drink some water or something. But anyway, mm, like this friend of mine, he was like now a friend of mine, but we never like visited each other outside of school. But it was, we would have if it had just gone on, But like anyway, I was like, telling stories to people, including staff there, like, "Oh, my brother, blah 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 blah." And then one of the staff was like, "Wait a minute, your brother? Your mom told me that you're the only child at home. I thought you were the only child at home." And then she like, it was like, in retrospect, now I'm thinking, yeah, she probably thought that my mother was lying about me needing to be there at the after school daycare, because like oh, she doesn't have a job and I'm an only child and she has nobody else to support, and all that, but like nobody else supporting her or whatever, nobody else helping, nobody else, and that she might have been lying about our situation or something, which she wasn't lying about our financial situation. I really was an only child, and I am still, but I mean, like, and then like, then there was like, this, where the thing where I was saying that I had a little brother too. I was talking about an older brother, and then I was talking about a little brother. And the little brother was like, supposedly my dad poured cereal over his head, and because like he refused to eat it, and all that. But and then, like, one of the daycare workers was like, "Oh my God, your dad really did that to your brother? That's terrible," and she was like worried for my well-being and for my brother's well-being, who didn't exist. And like, but like she told the other one of the other staff, who then asked me about it again. Hey, but you said, but you're the only child at home, right? And I'm like, yeah, 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 yeah. And like, and when would you have stopped lying? Oh, well, what were you doing here? I was telling a story. When would you have stopped? Well, when the story was over. And I actually meant that, but like at the same time, I knew I was lying, obviously, because how could you not? But and then like everybody was like, some of them, well, the kids didn't care. I mean, because they didn't really know me that well anyway. Except just to play, together and stuff. It wasn't like we were close or anything. I was kind of isolated. I didn't really have anybody I was that close with since like first grade, second grade, where me and my friends were close, and then later we drifted apart because we just had different, I don't know, hang-ups. Not just different interests, but just different hang-ups, different stuff that made us upset. And we no longer related to each other, and I never met anybody else that I could relate to. And I felt like abnormal, and I supposedly, was or something. I don't know, but you know. Anyway, back to the point here was that, um, and then like the other reasons why they thought that I was, that my parents were mental and I was mental and whatever, was that um uh, like there was one time, okay, like, well, everybody was obsessed with the movie Titanic back then, right? Okay, and I had seen it twice in the theater, and all the little kids, they hadn't seen it yet. They were waiting for it to come out on video, and they were asking me all about it. So they would gather around me, and I would explain to them every little detail, blow by blow, of what happened in that movie Titanic, and they were captivated. They were infatuated. They were like, "Oh my God, wow! Tell it to the part again about how they hid in the car and got naked and had sex." And I would just tell them about it, and they would like, and then one day, I didn't know what a prostitute was back then, but like that part where Jack tells Rose about a one-legged prostitute, I was just like, blow by blow, every like bit of dialogue I was saying, and they wanted every little detail. So I was telling them, so I was saying every little dialogue like bit about what was said in the movie. And so I got to the part where Jack was telling Rose about a one-legged prostitute, and I didn't know what that was. Like, it was just totally like innocuous. I didn't mean anything by it. And and then one of the daycare ones, well, like the judgmental one, that was like really judgmental, about like, kind of, moody, but like not like judgmental in like a snooty way, but more judgmental in a moody way. You know what I mean, right? Like she would be honest about, her judgmentality, rather than like, oh yeah, 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 I'll just looking down at you but not saying a word kind of thing. But she would kind of look down at you and not say a word, because she was kind of, scared in that way, but not really. She wasn't like the scaredy type, really, like really, really, but a little bit, But she was mostly straightforward, but not all the time. And but anyway, she, looked at me strange when I said that I wanted like a prostitute thing, as I was, doing the blow by blow account of Titanic to yet another group of kids. And she just looked at me strange, like, what a family. She's thinking, what a family, what a family. And she's wondering what's going on in my family. And anyway, that's a funny kind of thing. And another funny kind of thing was, this friend of mine who was at the daycare, who was also in my grade, but in a different class, because she was in French immersion and I was in the English, stream, the dumb English stream. All of those English kids are so dumb, and they're so rowdy, and they're so, not, they're so not ambitious, and they're so, oh, sorry, I keep spitting on the fucking camera. But anyway, like, I'm sorry, I haven't drunk enough water today. Like, I don't always spit on the fucking camera, man. But like I just did today. I don't know. But anyway, back to the point here was, um, like they're just like, looking down on the English kids kind of. And then, all of the like kind of snooty families were like in the French immersion for some reason, because they were trying to get their kids to, learn different languages, be in the international kind of program when they were in high school, all that. And in elementary school, they were trying to prepare them for that in high school, to be in the leadership international whatever program, while everybody else, their parents didn't care, they were poor, whatever. And my, parents were kind of like, didn't fit in with either of those groups, and, either because the ones that were in the English, program, that weren't, poor and supposed, oh, they're scumbags, and that's like a big stereotype. I don't believe that, but, and, but like the ones that were, they were either the rich kids or like the social climbing English families or the poor families, and we didn't fit in with either of them. So I was kind of isolated, and the kids started, believing their families about us, and believing each other about us if they, didn't care about, if their families didn't care about us or whatever, they would believe each other about. So I didn't fit in really anyway, like, so mm, I ended up not fitting in and fitting in less as I, grew older and all that, because partially because of all that. And like my friends like were like the rich social, not rich, but the wannabe rich social climbing families in the English stream, and then there were the ones in the French stream. And one of my friends was in the French stream, and her family was the like one of the social climbing families, I remember. And they were so embarrassed like during this like ice storm that happened in 1998 in Montreal, like in Quebec and Ontario, where there was a state of emergency. It was in the Guinness Book of World Records, blah blah blah. They couldn't get food in, and people were going to starve, and people were going to, 35 people died in the ice storm because of the ice storm. And it was just like a big thing in the news and everything back then. And because there wasn't a lot of conflict in the world as much now as then as now, so that was a big thing back then. And that was a big disaster back then. And something like COVID would have been unheard of back then, because like disasters didn't happen when I was that age. It was just like, I had a boring childhood because it was like I was in a first world country, Canada, and sheltered because of that and all that. So it was boring. I was actually wishing for disasters just to get out of my miserable, boring, and picked on kind of life. But anyway, and just like the spiritual issues, where that was, that would just be that was another can of worms, the spiritual stuff. But it was really related and really relevant to it all, because if I had had like some sort of spiritual reassurance, then I wouldn't have been so miserable, and I would have been able to handle everything else way 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 better. I would have been able to handle things at all. Like I would have been able to handle things like that. That's just the bottom line. And I wasn't really able to handle things. And it's not, I wasn't like a disruptive or like failing person back then. Like later, when I became like kind of like one of those people that just like stopped succeeding or whatever, but and I wasn't ever really a disruptive person really in my life. Sometimes people even find me a passive person, and other people think I'm a totally disruptive person because they ain't seen nothing though. Like they're just like biased. But mm, it's like they're in denial that they've seen worse, so and they think they can pick on me because I'm a safer target than a lot of people, because I don't have resources that a lot of them have, like where they know lawyers or they know this person or whatever. But anyway, like when I was like a kid, and that like during this ice storm, like there was like a shelter that they created at a school, a local school, and I ran into my friend there and her family, and they were staying there. And then my friend told me later, that she was so embarrassed that her family didn't have a generator, and she was so embarrassed that her family had to leave and go to a shelter, that she wrote in her school journal for English class or French class or something, that the reason she went to the shelter was to be with me, when really she had been at the shelter before we were. Like first I was with like relatives, and that me and my mother went to see some relatives to when then they lost power too, so then we had to go to the shelter. But my friend had been at the shelter like from the beginning, like with her family or something, and then but she lied and said that the reason she went to the shelter was like for to see me, to be with me, the poor kid in her friend group or whatever. And because all of her other friends were not so poor, including some of my friends in the English stream, who were the not rich but wannabe rich social climber families, and that wasn't their fault, and it wasn't even really their parents' fault in a way, but their parents were like that. And but anyway, so she like lied, threw me under the bus to save herself, but it wasn't something that harmed or hurt me. So like nobody even picked on me for that or anything like that, because a lot of them probably went to shelters too, or just suffered in the dark or whatever, like or just had fun in the dark, whatever, right, who cares? But it depends on what their family values are, and like we would have stayed in the our apartment, but well, we didn't have any way to do anything, so we went to be with my relatives, my cousins, and aunt and uncle, and then they lost power, and they thought that they kind of thought I did it in a way, because whenever I went to their house, they would lose power for some reason, like ever since around that time. So they thought I had psychic abilities that turned off the power. So they were not liking even for me to come over sometimes. And once when we were watching this movie called The Ice Storm, guess what happens? The power goes out. And guess who, chose to watch that movie? I did. So of course, guess who gets blamed, It's like they're more superstitious, than I am. And they're supposedly the sane ones, and I'm supposedly the crazy one, but they're more superstitious than I am in that way. And I don't know. I mean, I shouldn't judge. It's not that it's invalid for all I know, because my husband is a very spiritual person, and electronics do not work very well around him. They keep blowing out around him because of that. And maybe that was something that was happening with me back then too, because I am a very spiritual person, but I was I was like repressing it back then. So I didn't know, really much about that, and I was repressing it, and, it was just befuddled me, so it came out in weird ways. But anyway, back to, the whole point of all this, before I go off on this in another weird tangent, is, mm, we then go to the, shelter. I run into my friend there and her family, and she's so embarrassed, and then, and then like later, like, in seventh grade, she would deny she was my friend, just like right in front of me too. Like they would ask her right in front of me. They asked her once right in front of me, are you her friend? And she shook her head right in front of me while looking in a terrified way at me. Like she thought I was going to retaliate or something. She didn't know, how I would react. I didn't react at all, but, she didn't know that. She was scared, and she was scared that she would be, you know, ostracized if she was my friend, so she ditched me. But then she acted like the next year like nothing had happened, and she was my acquaintance again or whatever, even though we had been like close friends before. But and then she had actually given me some advice, like, before she decided to shun me. But anyway, um uh like before that, actually, there was like, when I went to her birthday party, which was on the last day of school the year before in third grade. Anyway, but before I say that, I'm gonna say at the daycare, like the after school daycare, the whole thing is that how the staff like found me so weird and everything, found my parents weird, found my whole family weird. But like I said, like right in front, when her parents came to pick her up, I said, "Oh, remember me from the shelter during the ice storm?" That mother was fucking mortified. And she deserved it. She was a fucking bitch. I mean, she deserved to be mortified if she was going to feel that way about a child, because that child was honest. If she was going to feel like I humiliated her and ruined her life by saying in front of everyone that she went to a shelter during the ice storm, that she didn't have a generator so she couldn't stay at home and have power at home, how humiliating for her, and how unforgivable of me, And so so like, that was just so funny. Like I had to see the funny side of it, otherwise I'd go insane. And like I didn't really understand. I didn't really think about it, until later, like a year or two later, when I'm like, oh yeah, that's what happened. That's what was going on. That's why she looked at me funny. That's why she looked like she wanted to murder me in a way, because I said in front of everyone that I revealed that she had been at a shelter, and that was embarrassing for her, because they were social climbers and everything, and wanted to be seen as, better off and as successful and as better than and all that. And I just blew their cover in a way, and that was kind of embarrassing for them. And then how are they gonna, do damage control now about that, even though it's not the biggest deal in the world. But they end up making a lot of things bigger than they are, and while trying to pretend they're not doing that. And so they were at kind of a loss, and it was probably torture for them in their heads. But guess what? It's also torture for other people who have to, be, I don't know, be subject to that behavior of theirs. So it's pretty much even, So, but anyway, back to the third grade party where, my mother was, well, she was somebody that would provoke me while acting all nicey pie towards me, in public, but then she would provoke me in private, and she would provoke me when nobody was listening or looking. So whenever I, lashed back verbally, even minorly, then I got seen as the bad guy, and then I finally, got rude about it, and, how could I not? So then that kind of, helped them not, want me back at the house anymore. And I got falsely accused of breaking their swing, aka, bending a bar that went across, like on the part that like that goes like this at one end, that's like, holding up the bar that goes across that the swings are hanging from, but it was actually somebody else that stood on that side, and bent it. It wasn't me, and it wasn't broken, it was bent. And it wasn't a swing that was, that was damaged. It was this bar that wouldn't have done anything to anything. and they made a big deal out of it. Like I had done it, and like it was, damage caused, and because I was I wasn't heavy. I was a normal size back then, but like I wasn't obese like now. But like I was like just a normal size. I thought I was obese, but I wasn't. Like I had a complex about my weight even at that age, but I wasn't fat. But like I was one of the heavier kids there because I was one of the older kids. So like me and my other friend who was even fatter than me, and she got banned from the house too, just like I did. Like she was even my friend was even told that she could never hang out with us again and all that. And you know how my friend got banned from the house for spilling a bowl of popcorn on the grass. And in that case, it was actually me that did it, and she thought it was they thought it was her that did it because she looked kind of like me, like same colored hair and everything, and I don't know, but and they thought it was her, and even if it had been her, like it's a bowl of popcorn and it's the grass. Why are you banning your child from seeing a friend of hers over a bowl of popcorn in the grass? And banning your child from seeing a friend anyway is not a good idea, and that's a whole other debate. But it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. It's not something that people should have the right to do, because children need to know that they are allowed to see their loved ones, their friends, that they're allowed to see somebody they care about. Everybody deserves that, but especially a child, and especially somebody that already has so little control in their life because they're being educated in that, and that's one thing. But then when you start to treat them like property, that's not humane for them, and that's another debate. And that's I know I'm right in this, that nobody deserves to be treated like property, and how to deliver it is another debate. But how to deliver the message and how to act it out in practical life, but that's another thing. But for a different time, different video, whatever. But different debate, but related but different. But anyway, the whole thing to say that that was like a little taster of like the lighter side of my childhood, where there's like little, not dark elements, but just little like amusingly inappropriate elements where there's a taster of controversy, yet it's still like innocent and very funny and very you know, it's very funny and very amusing, and something that you would talk about anytime. It's not something that you have to just talk to somebody who's talking a serious conversation with you about, like a psychologist, or like your friend who's talking serious with you or whatever. But because it's something you can just tell anyone and not have to write a book about it or something or whatever. But it's just a taster of my childhood, and there was a lot more to it than that. But that's a funny, some funny stories from my childhood, and there's others too, like the time that me and my cousin inadvertently threw the Bible out the window on Easter Sunday. Mm. And that's another story where we threw the Bible out the window. Like we were just so bored. Like I was 8, my cousin was 5, and we were bored. We were at the like Easter dinner at my father's parents' house. And like all the relatives were there. They were talking downstairs. Me and my cousin were playing upstairs. We got bored. We started throwing things out the window. And I forget whose idea it was to start throwing things out the window, but it was one of us. And then the other one started doing it too. And then one thing, like I threw out the window, and I didn't know what it was. I thought it was just some random book called Good News, but it was a Bible. It was the Good News Bible. And I didn't know. Like I just threw it out the window. Didn't know. I don't think I would have really thrown a Bible out the window. I would have been too scared to like go to hell or something, because like I believed in that stuff to an extent back then. But I threw it out the window. I think it was me that threw it out the window, because I remember picking it up and saying, "Yeah, this is a booklet. It's got to go out the window." So and we threw out this peg game out the window, and we never found all the pegs. When they made us like go outside and clean it up, and we never found all the pegs, and that peg game is never going to be the same. I remember my grandmother saying, and we're never going to find all the pegs from that peg game. And like it wasn't our peg game. We had no right to do that, but like we were bored, and that wasn't an excuse. But it's a funny story still, because like then she's like, "Oh boy, they threw the Bible out the window on Easter Sunday." Like my grandmother couldn't get over that. They threw the Bible out the window on Easter Sunday. Oh boy, she had a sense of humor about it, but she was like kind of concerned in a way, because like she was a religious person and everything, and. And I didn't even know that it was the Bible. And then, like, I went to school and wrote in my school journal, because back then I was still telling the truth in it, and I was in 2nd grade at the time, and I wrote, because we had to do that every year, that assignment in English. But anyway, I wrote we threw the Bible out the window on Easter Sunday, and then like when we were at my grandmother's place, and then my teacher happened to be a Jewish woman, and she was like a real like stickler for the Jewish stuff and everything. She would like even when we weren't doing moral and religious education that day, she would, if it was like a Jewish holiday, she would be unloading about it all on us and giving us assignments about it, bringing stuff to school to like demonstrate like food and stuff like matzahs and stuff or whatever. But anyway, she was. And I remember once when I was with my Jewish cousins on my mother's side, one Sunday, where there was some Jewish holiday. I think it was Passover, and we were at Cavendish Mall in Montreal. Because there was events there, Jewish events there, and I'm like, yeah, I was on at Cavendish Mall on Sunday. She's like, and then she wrote like underneath what I had written, I was at Cavendish Mall on Sunday too. And so she was like very interested because she knew she didn't think I was like Jewish, but she was wondering if I was Jewish. But she was also like thinking, but she has also said she threw out the Bible out the window on Easter Sunday. Like is she Christian? Is she Jewish? What's going on here? And she was interested, kind of like amused, interested, curious, whatever. And but anyway, I threw the Bible out the window on Easter Sunday with my cousin at my grandmother's place, and then like she wrote, "Is this true?" And she was so like amused and like, wow, she was almost impressed. It was like she liked the fact that I had thrown the Bible out the window on Easter Sunday. Like it was like she was like, oh wow, maybe this is maybe she was born to be Jewish instead of Christian or whatever. I mean, because she was a very kind of stickler of a Jewish person, and she was very living the Jewish thing and everything, and talking a lot about it in that sometimes, quite a bit anyway. And her family was kind of the same way. She brought some of her family in one day, about, even when it wasn't a Jewish thing, like you could tell that they were very into it and everything, the way they mentioned it and the way they, everything. And but anyway, it's another interesting, story because like I guess I'm bored, so I'm starting to make videos and everything. And there's more other reasons why I'm making videos now, way deeper other reasons, lots and lots of reasons, and some of them are very complicated and some of them are simple and whatever, but or seem to be simple, but whatever. I'm glad I'm finally able to speak about everything because I used to be more of a writer. Now I'm more of a talker, and now I just can't write. I have writer's block. So, and now I'm just dying to talk, so that's what I'm doing, and I don't really have many people to talk to about anything right now, because the friend that I live with, who's my roommate, has gone to a cottage for a while, and everybody, yeah, else I know is either, like, I'm on the outs with, or they're, like, busy, or they're sleeping right now, or whatever, and, um, my husband, is, like, in a different country right now, but, like, we're hoping to, like, get together soon where he's up here living with me. And that's another story and everything. But anyway, I hope to make more videos about just interesting topics to talk about and everything. Maybe I'll meet some new people. I don't know from all of this. Just like people who are talking with me about it all, whatever, who are just morbidly curious or just curious in a non-morbid way. Who knows? And mm, so this is probably like something good that that I'm glad that I'm doing, that I'm that I've been wanting to do for a little while. I even made a list of topics to talk about because I was so bored and felt so isolated and whatever. So that's what I'm doing, and my life is obviously more than what I mentioned in this this one, and my childhood was more than what I mentioned in this one, because everybody's life is more than just like a few little stories that might be funny and might not be to somebody else or whatever, but it's still interesting and fun to talk about, because I like to hear myself talk, and because I like to meet new people and get to know them over fun stories, because I like telling stories. That's why I like to write. I mean, I don't like to, it's not that I like office work. I actually am very sick of it, and that's why I'm more of a talker than a writer. Um, I'm actually very sick of sitting and writing. I want to do something else, and I want to speak, and I want to hear myself talk, because I guess I've not been hearing enough sound lately, enough noise. I'm understimulated in that way because I'm so isolated, and that's not too fun. So I'm trying to, I guess, feel better by hearing myself talk and maybe meeting new people while I'm waiting, because I do like talk to the people that I'm close to a lot, but a lot of them are right now are physically far away from me, and it's not the best thing that we can't be physically together right now, because I miss them a lot and they miss me, they miss each other, whatever. But um at least I'm glad that I have like my husband, who's the most important thing to me. And my son has been, I haven't been in contact with my son for years, and he probably wants to with me, but it's just, he probably just doesn't, well, a lot has happened, his father died, um, and like it's complicated and everything. That can be in a different video. I'm not going to mention anybody's identity. I'm just gonna like say what happened, but not not stuff that's too personal and not people's identities. I'll change names and everything, but anyway, this is long enough. I need to stop now. I'll just start some other new ones. So I'm glad to meet you, whoever you are, even if you're somebody that's gonna, be very skeptical of me or even be like hateful. At least like, somebody who like is benefiting some way from my stories in some way, even if they're just finding it ridiculous or whatever. At least they have something to talk about. At least they have something to find ridiculous and talk about, and have something to focus on, because otherwise they could be going insane. Who knows? But anyway, I'm glad to meet you, whoever you are, and I hope to meet whoever was in my soul circle. I believe in that kind of stuff, soul groups and all that, soul families, whatever you call them. And I hope to meet more people who are in my soul circle, my husband's soul circle, which is the same as mine. We're soulmates and everything. I keep spitting on the damn camera. I really need to drink some water before I make my next video. But um, anyway, I'm glad to meet you. So that's the bottom line.